Welcome everybody to the June 16th edition of the SLMOOC 2017, and we're very delighted to have today Rhiannon Chatnoir, who is Joyce Bettencourt, the designer and community organization gal in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and the co-lead of Avicon.org, VesuviusGroup.com, and right here, one of the most important places, I think, in Second Life, the Not-for-Profit Commons. Michael Bailey has been working with technology for the past 24 years. He's our second presenter today. Originally a programmer, he discovered Second Life in 2007 and then became invested in the Open Simulator project in 2009. Since then, he has acquired expertise scripting and building in virtual environments, as well as familiarity with the Open Simulator software and its configuration. As an open source advocate, he makes heavy use of tools such as Blender and Open Broadcaster Studio, streamed for the Open Simulator Community Conference since 2014, instrumental in the OSCC 2016 live streaming setup, coordination, training, and AV promotional materials. Currently staff member at Avicon, he's dedicated to promoting projects for social good by the means of video tutorials, presentations on useful software, and content creation. I will have a link to both of these bios in the description of the video, as well as more information about Not-for-Profit Commons. And today we'll be having a basic introduction to streaming and recording in this particular video. So thank you very much for agreeing to do this, you guys. We're really happy that you're able to produce this for our students and for everybody else. So thank you very much. That's the end of my spiel.
You're welcome. I am going to also, so I'm Rhiannon Chatnoir, as she mentioned, and I am going to put my bio in as well. As I said in text, we host these weekly meetings every Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. They usually run till 10 a.m. and often they focus around technology topics or the great work that those of us who do serious work here, whether that be for nonprofit social good, educational, librarian folks, you know, those that are doing like relevant kind of like programs, or you know, those who are presenting even on tech tools, social digital media related things. So I invite you all to like reach out to me if you want to present on your work or any topic tools, kind of like what we're doing today. And I will put on my blurb of stuff. It'll probably get cut off. But I will kind of put the rest. And there's more of it. I put the link to the bio itself. I'll put the other half in here. That should probably grab it to overlap. But so that's me, and I won't read it out loud because it's way too long. But the important thing is more about Non-Profit Commons, where we are today. So just a little context about that. That Non-Profit Commons was started in 2016 by Susan Tenby, Glitteractic Cookie here in Second Life, and she. At first, it was part of Info Island, which some of you may have known in the past. There was quite a few of us that few communities that started off on Info Island. And I will give a link to our About page, which is a great kind of infographic that goes through the history of Non-Profit Commons. So we're kind of coming up on our 11th anniversary here right now in Second Life. And I'll put the mission in as well. But in essence, we are a community that's for nonprofits and other aligned folks to explore and learn about virtual worlds and foster these connections and discover the many ways in which nonprofits might utilize the unique environment of Second Life to achieve their missions. And we do offer free virtual office space here for those doing nonprofit social good, cause-based work, also communities and creative related things that fall around that, library issues as well, info science. So you can kind of reach out to us if that's an interest to you as well, if you'd like to have Non-Profit Commons as a home base. And If you want, while you're going along, feel free to tweet out to us. That's the NonProfit Commons Second Life. And some links I shared at the very beginning. We also have a Facebook Plus and Facebook and a Google Plus account. So feel free to take photos, and then later on you can tag them with your avatars. So I'm going to jump in now. Most of this presentation is going to be done by Marcus, and I'll be here for also, I have a background too in digital media, so I'm here for kind of the handling questions and wrangling that sort of stuff, and kind of picking up comments here and there as needed. But Marcus will be running most of it. So I will. We already put his his bio in, but Marcus Llewellyn is Michael Bailey in real life, as she mentioned, and he's going to walk us through this hands-on workshop. I'm going to put again the links in this blurb sort of at the end there. If you want to follow along, it would be good to download the Open Broadcaster software, and then also just if you click on that link, you can check if your YouTube account is verified, and that's another piece of the streaming, and it'll kind of quickly go through that. And Open Broadcaster is a free open source tool, so yay! And I will hand this over to Marcus, and he can start whenever he's ready.
Okay, thank you, Rhiannon. Before I start, I just would like to say thank you for coming. I've given this presentation twice before, and this is basically kind of a new version of it, so you'll be the first ones to hear it. I've expanded it, and hopefully we'll have time to cover a lot more information in this one. The other thing I'd like to mention is I do have horrible sinus problems, so that I will sniffle. So I apologize ahead of time if I'm sniffling a lot. All right, so I'd like to welcome you all to this introductory presentation on Open Broadcaster Studio. Open Broadcaster Studio, which is often simply referred to as OBS, is a tool that allows you to perform quite a few tasks with video and audio. And examples of this include desktop or window recordings, and or video device capture from sources like webcams or video cameras, and the ability to set up various types of sources in a collection called a scene that you can switch between, making it behave basically like your own miniature television studio. OBS is free, and it's open source software. It is cross-platform, so it has installation packages available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It has been under active development for a very long time now and has a thriving community, and the developers are really responsive to the needs of their users. It's really great. Although it has become most popular with people who live stream video games, it has a lot more potential than that. You can use it to record in-world events, like this one right here. You could record meetings, lectures, tutorials, machinima, do your own news show, whatever you'd like, really. You can even coordinate multiple cameras in a real-world setting, like a classroom. You can add titles or text. You can seamlessly transition to show yourself, YouTube or other media. You can show websites with it. You can show have audio sources plugged into it. You can record, live stream video, or do both at the same time. So it does a whole lot of stuff. It is a very powerful piece of software. And before I get into Open Broadcaster Studio itself, I'd like to start with some information that's good to have on hand before you start to stream. And to start off with, if you're recording or streaming from your desktop and you plan on speaking, a good quality headset is a great idea. Gaming headsets tend to have the best microphone quality, and the one I use is the Corsair Gaming H21 headset. And that one's a little older now. But gaming headsets can cost hundreds of dollars. So if you're on a budget, this headset has a lower price point, but also has great quality, and it's what I'm using right now. So if you like what you hear, this is a good headset for you. If you want more of a radio voice sound, you might want to go with a dynamic microphone. And these kinds of microphones can provide extremely good clarity when speaking. They're also quite sensitive and can pick up sounds from a distance. The one I use, for example, it can pick up every sound rooms away in my house. And so that can be a pro or a con depending on what you'd like to do. If you'd like to pick up sounds from a distance, that's great. But if you don't, then you need to make sure to lock down the room you're in or tell everybody to be quiet. The one that I use is called the Blue Snowball USB microphone, which again is a budget selection, but it has great quality. If you'd like to broadcast your real-world self, then you'll probably want a webcam. And many of us already have one built into our laptops or all-in-one computers or something like that. But the quality of these vary a whole lot. And if you're not happy with yours, you want a high-quality video, consider the Logitech HD Pro C920. Again, this is a little bit older, but that's a good thing in that it's cheap and it still works really, really great. It is a favorite. A long-standing favorite among game streamers or video bloggers, and provides a wide field of view, 1080p stream, and works surprisingly well under even low lighting conditions. And although I haven't done this personally, even with USB extension cords, I could even easily see these being used as multiple cameras in a classroom or a small lecture area on the Jeep. Having 2 or more monitors can be a real boon when live streaming, because this allows you to have your viewer on one monitor, fully maximized, and then OBS and any other related software you'll be needing on the other monitor. While you can certainly use OBS with one monitor by setting OBS to stream and or record and then putting it into the background, you won't be able to as easily monitor the live stream. And when you're using the full studio mode of OBS, where you can switch between scenes and sources, two monitors is practically a must. Something that is a definite extra, but is great to have if you're doing in-world recording or streaming, is a 3D mouse. And perhaps the one that's most familiar to all of us here is the 3D Connection Space Navigator, because the viewers we use all have support baked in for it. Using this to control your fly cam allows you to have a nice, smooth camera movements, or even something resembling crane shots. At this year's Virtual World's Best Practices in Education 2016, I was filming John Pathfinder Lester's keynote presentation, and joyful spirit that he is, he came as a mesh penguin, but he didn't come as just one. He could, and he did, summon a whole huddle of penguins to follow him around as he ran all over the stage, and he was throwing fish at the audience, and when he dismissed his waddle of penguins, they flew up into the sky, and it was a real pleasure to film, but the 3D mouse really, really came in handy that day, let me tell you. And finally, on the tool front, getting yourself a camera HUD can be a lot of help. A camera HUD allows you to switch your viewer's camera to preset positions quickly and on the fly. If, for example, you had a panel of people on stage, you could have a set up a preset for each person, a close-up of each person, and then another preset that showed the whole panel. And there are a number of good camera HUDs on the Second Life Marketplace, and they're worth taking a look at. But if you would like a free one, we also have one of those available here for you to grab. This one is the progeny of the HUD we've been using at the Open Simulator Community Conference for the last 4 years. The original creator was Aswaldo Vallada. James Lloyd made further modifications and improvements over the last few years, and the version we have here today contains my contributions to add even more features and optimizations. It's Creative Commons licensed, so feel free to take it, modify it, give it away, whatever you'd like. And all you need to do is click on that big gray box that we have on stage to, and it should pull a folder right into your inventory. Alrighty. So, moving on, we want our audience to have the best possible experience when viewing our live stream. And one of the most important aspects of this is our upload bandwidth speed. Upload bandwidth is not the same as download. Download bandwidth is a speed usually advertised by internet service providers. Upload speed is different. When you're streaming, you're pushing data out, and that's an upload. So to get the best results, you're going to want to have, for best results, you're going to want to have at least 2.5 megabits per second of upload speed, and this will allow you to have a 720p video stream at a very reasonable quality. And if you're unable to determine, if your ISP just won't tell you, for example, just what your upload speed is, a good solution is to use a speed test online. And www.speedtest.net has a test that can be a pretty good way to figure out just how much upload bandwidth you have. If you have less than 2.5 megabits per second, don't worry, you can still stream, but you're going to have to stream at a lower resolution, like 480p. The higher the resolution you stream at, the more upload speed you will need. For 1080p, you'd likely want at least 4 megabits per second, and of course more is always better. Although I probably wouldn't bother worrying about going much higher than 8 megabits per second. At that point, you're probably as high of a quality as you're ever going to get anyway. Remember also that other applications on your computer often require upload bandwidth, so you have to factor that in. Your viewer or communication software like Skype or cloud storage services like Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, these will all need upload bandwidth, and it's often a really good decision to disable any cloud storage services when you're live streaming. You don't want those kicking in and syncing and grabbing your upload bandwidth while you're trying to live stream. If you share your network with other people in your office or household, they can also wind up using some of your upload bandwidth. So if you're at home and you're live streaming, you might want to tell the kids to hold off on the Netflix for an hour or two while you get your job done. And depending on the computer that you're using to record or stream, you'll want to keep in mind that OBS can eat up a lot of your computer's resources. Just running OBS and your viewer at the same time on your average laptop will eat up a lot of CPU cycles in memory. So you want to make sure to close any programs that aren't immediately necessary for the task at hand. And this includes web browsers. If you're running any Adobe or Autodesk applications in the background, you definitely want those closed, or anything else that might kick in and steal your computer's resources. And obviously, the more powerful your computer, the more programs you can keep running. But ideally, you want to keep it to a minimum. And returning to the subject of bandwidth, we'll finish this section and slide by talking about quality by recommending that you use a wired Ethernet connection with your computer. While you can stream over Wi-Fi, it's going to be a really less dependable way to go. Wireless connections often drop network traffic, and this can have an adverse effect on your live stream. You'll almost definitely wind up with odd pauses and stuttering or dropped audio. You don't want that. Oops. All right. So that's everything on your side of the internet, and if you only want to record for archival purposes or for later editing, this slide isn't going to be as interesting to you. But if you would like to live stream, OBS comes with presets for many popular live streaming services. A lot of streaming sites have been created with gamers and esports events in mind. They often want payment for various comforts such as no advertising, to have an unlimited audience, to be able to stream at a higher resolution. And so for this reason, this presentation is going to focus mainly on YouTube as a streaming platform. Twitch, Smashcast, which was just this month rebranded from Hitbox, Mixer, which was recently formerly known as Beam, apparently rebranding is going around right now, are all gamer services. And the only one I might consider taking a look at is Mixer. Mixer is currently free, currently doesn't advertise. It's very gamer focused, but its especially unique and useful aspect is that it has a feature that allows you to stream at a very low latency. As a matter of fact, pardon me. As a matter of fact, as I give this talk, I'm streaming over Mixer right now, and you can try viewing it at the URL I just put into live chat, and it may not work for everybody. This is pretty new technology that they're using, so some browsers might not work. But for those of you that it does work for, you'll be able to follow along and see exactly what I'm doing to help set up OBS. And it'll be like when I move my mouse, it'll be nearly instantaneous. So that's the interesting thing about Mixer right there. And it's pretty much the only thing I use Mixer for. Because usually when you're using a live streaming service such as YouTube or any other service really, you're going to have very high latency. And what that means is that what your audience is watching will be anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds behind what has just happened to you. And this makes interacting with people who are watching a real challenge. So for those times when the audience interaction is important, Mixer is definitely worth a look. Be aware that at this time, Open Broadcaster Studio hasn't yet caught up with the rebranding of Beam to Mixer, so it's still listed as Beam in Open Broadcaster. Hopefully they'll fix that very soon. And Facebook may also be an attractive option for many. It's hard to beat the size of the potential audience that it can bring in. And the only other one that I really want to touch on is Restream.io. And it's special because it isn't actually a streaming service in the traditional sense. What it does is it acts as a middleman, and it allows you to stream to several streaming services at once. So if you'd like to be on both YouTube and Facebook at the same time, this service makes it possible to do that. The price you pay is even more latency. So if you were going to have a 20-second delay just streaming to YouTube, you could wind up with a 40-second delay because Restream will add on even more of a delay. And we're going to use YouTube because it's absolutely free. It will not advertise on channels that don't have monetization enabled. And your audience size has no limits, and if you have the right equipment, you can even stream all the way up to 4K resolution. YouTube does require that you verify your account, and you can find the link for that on this slide if your account isn't already verified. And it's something to keep in mind if being especially anonymous is important to you. So finally, we can move on to how to get Open Broadcaster itself. So if you haven't already done so, you can acquire the software at obsproject.com. There's a very prominent download button right on the front page of the site, and it makes it really easy to get the right package for your operating system. OBS has an auto update feature built into it, at least for Windows. I'm not sure about Linux and Mac, to be honest. But for Windows, it certainly does. And that's nice because the feature does get bug fixes and enhancements on a regular basis. So, once you've installed Open Broadcaster Studio and started it up, you'll see a screen that looks very much like this one. But before we get into the main interface, we need to slog through some settings and make sure you're set up to record or stream. And on the right side, you're going to see a row of buttons, and one of those buttons is Settings. So if you're following along, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to click on Settings now. And once you do that, this screen will pop up. And there's really only, let's see, well, this window is the settings window. It's naturally enough, it starts off with the general settings tab on the left, and this window is really very similar to the preferences window that we have in the viewers we use. There's really only 3 settings here that I'd like to draw your attention to. The very first option allows you to choose your native language. So if English isn't your native language, it could obviously be easier to work with your native language. So there's a decent selection of languages in there: German, Dutch, French, Spanish. Those are all in there. And the second option is just below that, and it comes down to a personal preference, really. By default, OBS has a light theme, but it also has the option to change to a dark theme. And personally, I really like the dark theme. I find it's easier on my eyes, but more importantly, it moves the focus to the content. And those of us who have used modern versions of image editing, video editing, or 3D software will have noticed that they've all moved on to a dark user interface for this very reason. The last option to note is a checkbox called automatically record when streaming. Live streaming anything can be a real handful, and it's very easy to forget to hit both the stream and record buttons. It's happened to me embarrassingly often enough that this option is a really handy option to have turned on, and it eliminates that worry. So that's all we need to cover in here. So let's move on to the stream settings by clicking that on the left side. Now, this settings page is where we decide what service we want to stream to, if any. If you're just going to record, this tab has no relevance to you. For this workshop, we're going to choose YouTube. At the very top, it'll say streaming services. If it doesn't, you'll want to click that drop-down box to make sure that it does. And then below that, where it says service, you'll choose YouTube, YouTube Gaming. And then the other thing you need to set is the stream key. And you get that by going to your YouTube dashboard, which is typically at youtube.com/live_dashboard. And when you go to that page and scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see a key. And all you need to do is copy and paste that key from there back into Open Broadcaster. And then you'll be authorized to stream to your channel. Be aware that anybody that has this key can also stream to your channel. So you want to keep that key safe. Normally this key will never change, but if you need to, you can have YouTube generate a new key for you in the dashboard. And this is the way most streaming services work. They have a key, and you just need to keep that key, and don't give it out unless you really want to, and you can change it. Same thing as YouTube. YouTube does it in a pretty standard way. Moving on, we're going to select the Output tab in the Settings window. And these settings determine the quality of your recording or stream, as well as your computer's performance while accomplishing these tasks. At the very top, you'll see a drop-down called Output Mode. And by default, this is set to Simple. And I recommend you leave it there unless you have some experience with how video encoders work. The settings offered by Simple Mode will offer very good results. Beneath that, you'll see a frame called Streaming. And perhaps the most important of the streaming settings is your video bitrate. By default, it's going to be set to 2,500. Sorry, I just I just had a fuse blow in my brain. Yeah, by default, this is set to 2,500. And like, for example, if you have 3 megabits per second upload speed, that works out to about 3,000 kilobits per second. So we're just moving the decimal point over a few places. So if you had 3 megabits per second, the 2,500 default in OBS will work just fine and provide room for anything else that's going to require some upload bandwidth. And in the speed test I told you about, if it told you that you have something less than that, let's say you only have 1 megabit per second for your upload, you'll probably want to set that lower. The number should be something probably like 768. And you won't be able to stream at a high definition resolution at that bit rate, but you can stream at 480p, which is good enough. If you have a lot of upload bandwidth, though, feel free to push that number as high as you can. Although I wouldn't bother going any higher than 8,000 in there. The next setting is named encoder, and this is what's going to compress your video before it's sent to the streaming service. By default, this is set to software X264. And this makes use of your computer's CPU to encode your video. This encoder can provide great quality, but if your computer isn't very powerful, it can degrade the performance of both your stream and your computer if it winds up using too much resources. So if you click on that drop-down box and you happen to see another option there, you might want to try that out. Newer Intel CPUs have a video encoder built into them called QuickSync. And so that will possibly be in a lot of laptops, for example, made in the last few years. And the QuickSync encoder will take a lot of the work off of your CPU. If you have an NVIDIA or an AMD graphics card, these may also have built-in encoders that may show up in this list, and you can try using those. The last streaming setting we'll talk about here is the audio bit rate. And by default, that's 160, which should be fine for most people. But if it's very important for you to conserve your upload bandwidth, you can knock this down to 96 or even 64. But I wouldn't go lower than 64. A low audio bit rate is just fine if all you're going to broadcast is somebody talking. But keep in mind that if your stream contains music or other more dynamic types of audio, your audience, that is, will experience some distortions and some chirping, and it just won't sound very good. Below the streaming options, we have a frame called recording, and the first option in that section is your recording path, and by default, and this is where all your video recordings will be stored. By default, this is the video folder that your operating system defaults to for each user. For example, on Windows, it's going to be the video folder that in your library. In Linux, it's going to be under probably home. In your home directory, it's probably going to be under a video folder. Not sure where it is on the Mac, but it's probably the same deal. And the concern here is that you want to make sure that that disk drive has plenty of space available, because video recordings can wind up quite large. So if you have plenty of free space on that drive, you can just leave it alone. But if you don't, then you're going to want to change it to a drive that has much more space. Under that, we have the recording quality. And by default, this will record at the same quality as your stream. And if you're streaming at a high bit rate of 4,000 or more, this may be adequate. But if you'd like something nicer, you might choose either high quality, medium file size, or even indistinguishable quality large file size. And it's not kidding when it says large file size. And unless you have a whole lot of disk space or need a pixel perfect recording for later video editing, I absolutely would not recommend that you choose lossless quality. It will eat up disk so fast your head will spin. Below that, we have the recording format, and this defaults to FLV normally. I always use MP4, and this format is ubiquitously supported by software and online video services, so it's what I use all the time. But if you happen to have video editing software that, for example, only supports QuickTime, you might decide to use something like MOV instead. That's the important stuff here. So now let's move on to the audio settings tab on the left. And for these settings, we really only need to worry about the ones that are labeled as devices. We have 2 output devices and up to 3 input devices. By default, Open Broadcaster is going to choose your default playback and recording devices, and this is typically any built-in speakers or microphone. But if, for example, you wanted to capture and record in-world voice, like if you were to want to record what we're doing right now, for example, you might want, and you're using a headset, what you might want to do is set your desktop audio source to your headset's earphones. And if you want to record your voice, you might want to set your microphone to your headset's microphone. And that way, no other sounds will come in. You won't get sounds from, Skype binging you or notifications, or you won't be able to. You won't have to hear any of your viewer sounds. The only sounds that will come into OBS will be from the device you specify here, which will only be in World Voice. And to be on the safe side, it's really good practice to make sure that any video devices you're not using are set to disabled. That way you won't accidentally have stray audio coming in from some audio device somewhere. So now for the last tab, and this is the video tab. And there are 4 settings here, but we really only need to concern ourselves with 2 of them. The first is the output scaled resolution. And this will set what resolution your final video, whether it's recorded or streamed, will be. By default, this will be 1280 by 720, which is also known as 720p. And if you're recording with a bitrate between 2500 and 3000, this should be a good choice. If you're streaming at a bitrate of 4000 or more, you might decide to go ahead and up this to 1920 by 1080, which is also known as 1080p. If you don't have much upload bandwidth, going to a lower resolution is really recommended. Although the image won't be as sharp, you'll have higher quality by dropping the resolution. If you try to push too high of a resolution, you're just going to wind up with a stuttering stream, and your audience will not have a good experience. So in this situation, consider using a resolution, something like, for me, for example, one of the options provided to me is 852 by 480, which roughly approximates a 480p stream. And that's about that's equivalent to pretty much what an old-style television set would put out. It's just good enough resolution to show text reasonably well. And the next setting we need to worry about is the one that sets your frame rate, also known as frames per second, or simply FPS. And by default, the FPS value will be 30, which is what most streaming services expect. But again, if you don't have a lot of upload bandwidth and are struggling to get a good stream, you might try lowering this down to 20 or even 15. I wouldn't go lower than 15 though. 15 is, traditional hand-drawn animation was only 15 frames per second, and this is just enough to provide a relatively smooth experience. But if you can, 30 is the ideal setting for streaming. So now we are all done with settings. Yay! It's a horrible slog, but you need to get all that set up. But now you can go ahead and click on the OK button in your settings, and these settings will take effect, and they'll also be there the next time you start OBS. And now that they're set, you shouldn't need to worry about touching them again. Now we can just move on to what OBS is meant for, which is streaming and recording. So I'm going to start with an overview of the interface. And at the top, you're going to see a large black area, and this is your preview area. Once we've begun capturing something, that's where it'll show up. And that's also what your audience will see. Going towards the bottom, starting, we're going to start from the left and move to the right. So all the way on the right, we have a scene list. And when you first start up Open Broadcaster, you already have a scene. And just to the right of that is a source list. Both of these lists have plus and minus icons that you can click on the bottom to add or remove items. These two list boxes also have an important relationship. A scene is a collection of sources, and a source is something that you will capture and then record or stream. When a scene is selected and you add sources, those sources all belong to just that scene. And if you were to create a new scene and switch to it, the sources box would start out blank again, waiting for you to fill it with more sources. So a scene is just a way of grouping sources together. A source can be many things. You can capture your viewer, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But you can also use any single window on your desktop as a source. You can add text as a source, images, video, audio, a browser, and you can rearrange and adjust each of these in the preview area. After sources, to the right of that, we have the audio mixer, and all of the audio devices that you enabled will show up here. Any audio sources that you add will appear here as well. Each device has a volume slider, a mute button that looks like a little speaker, and it has there's a little gear icon that'll let you add filters to that. And I'm not going to, filters can be really handy, but due to time constraints, I'm just letting you know that they exist. Each device will also have a meter that shows you how loud your audio is. And if anybody is able to, it looks like, looks like at least 5 of you are able to see my stream. Yay! I'm glad it came in useful for at least 5 of you. You can see that there's an audio bar that's moving as I talk. So there's going to be a volume meter that'll show you just how loud your audio device is at any given time. Now to the right of the audio mixer, we have transitions. And this will determine how switching between scenes will look. And right now, there are only 2 transitions, cut and fade. When switching between scenes, the cut transition will simply switch from one to another without any special effect or any interruption. The fade effect, and I abuse it horribly, I love the fade effect. The fade effect will gently blend from one scene to another. And finally, all the way over on the right side, we have a row of buttons. And this is where you start or stop a stream, where you can turn on studio mode, where you can go back in settings if you're a masochist. And I bet we all know what the exit button does, so I'm not going to explain that one. And now we're finally ready to get to do something more than just listening to me talk about settings and other stuff. We're going to set up a source to stream, and we're going to keep things simple, very, very simple to get started. We already have a scene that OBS automatically created when it first opened, so we're going to go ahead and use that. In the sources box, we're going to go ahead and add a source there, and we'll do that by going to the plus sign on the bottom and clicking on it, and a menu will pop up. You have 3 choices here for capturing the viewer, and which one you use will depend on your hardware and operating system. Some work under some combinations while others won't. It's really bizarre. I don't have an explanation for it. I just know that for some reason some work on some computers and some work on other computers. If you're using the Windows operating system, game capture is a good option, and probably the best option if it works for you. It will give you the fastest and cleanest result, but it may not work with all hardware, especially it seems to have the most trouble with laptops. The next one, and this is the one I'm going to encourage you to try first to use for this workshop, is window capture. This source is available in all of the operating systems, including Mac and Linux, and it will usually work under any combination of hardware. bizarrely enough, it does not work on the computer I'm using right now. So for those of you that are following along on the stream, you're going to see me use the game capture because that's the one that works for me. And the last one that you can use, if both of those fail, is the desktop capture. And this is my least favorite option. Because it'll capture absolutely everything that pops up on your screen, including notifications from apps or windows that unexpectedly pop up and take focus, and you're like, go away. But it will do the job if the other two won't. So we're going to try to capture our viewer. And like I said, like most of you to try using window capture. And the settings for all of these are fairly similar, so don't panic if what you see is different. And a new window will pop up. And in the slide, this window will be the one that's on the left. And all this really wants to know is what you want to name your source. And I usually just name it, give it the generic name of viewer because I can flip between viewers. You can name it whatever you'd like. And once you've named it, you just click the OK button. And another new window will pop up. And on the slide, this is the one to the right. This one wants to know what window you'd like to capture. And at the top of this window is a preview area. So you can see exactly what will be captured. Below the preview, let's see. There will be a drop-down called Window. And you're going to want to click in that drop-down and make sure that your viewer is selected. And the other option, and hopefully it'll appear in the preview area.
We have a question in the chat from Cat's Eye.
Mine says preview disabled. Cat's Eye, do you have more than one monitor? See, I've seen this happen before. This happened to my niece when I was trying to. She wants to be a big old YouTube star, and I was trying to help her learn to stream, and it happened to her. Sometimes what can happen is the preview won't actually happen unless both windows, unless the window you're actually trying to capture has focus. In other words, is your active window. And if that still doesn't do it, I don't know. You might have a hardware problem. And you could try using, like I said, are you using window capture? Because if you are, you could try using game capture. And if that doesn't work, you can go ahead and try just using desktop capture. I'm sorry, is there a setting for what exactly? No, you don't have to enable the preview. It's just it's always on. So if it's not working, that means that maybe the input source you chose is a bad choice. So, for example, if you did go with window capture, like I said, try just cancel and just try adding a here, and I'll even show you. Are you watching? Do you happen to be one of the people watching my live stream?
It might be good to put the link in again too.
Yeah. Let's see. Hopefully that's still in my buffer. Yes, it is. Yay. So, I mean, basically, and if you have voice, you can go ahead and talk to me with voice. All right. I'm sorry, Cat's Eye. There's always somebody who ends up, it doesn't work for, and I'm sorry that it's not working for you. And we'll have time afterwards. We definitely want to have a Q&A afterwards, so I can try to help you out. And even if we need to stay after that, and you want to stay, I'm happy to help you walk through it later. So to continue on, in that window on the right on the slide, which keeps changing, you want to make sure that you're okay. Now I've lost my place. So you want to make sure that your viewer has been selected under the window list box. And the only other thing you really need to pay attention to is you want to look for a capture cursor option. And normally I uncheck this one. For most things, like a presentation, workshop, lecture, meeting, those style of things, you don't want your mouse cursor waving all over the screen. That's just a distraction for your audience. But for doing something like a tutorial, or something where you need a pointer to point things out, you might want your mouse cursor. So it depends on your situation. Most of the time I uncheck it. So once you've gotten that window set up, all you need to do is click OK, and hopefully you'll have a screen that looks something like this. And it'll return to the main OBS interface. And if it looks like this, that's fantastic. You now have something you can record or stream. And we are most of the way there. We are pretty much right now. If you have all your YouTube set up and you were to hit you don't have to, but if you were to start streaming, what you see would be streamed right out. But if you look at this preview, you'll probably notice that there's a few issues. There may be empty or black space on one or more sides, and you might not want your window borders, your viewer menus, or any other viewer windows to show up in your broadcast. And there's a couple of ways to deal with this. And the simplest and easiest way is to use a keyboard shortcut. And if you're using Firestorm, and I think the official Second Life viewer, that shortcut should be Control Alt F1, and that will remove your entire user interface. There will be no name tags, no voice indicators. Absolutely everything except for your view of the world will disappear. HUDs will still show up, so any HUD that you don't need during a recording or stream should be detached. Now, this keyboard shortcut might be different on some viewers. If you're using, for example, Alchemy or Singularity, the keyboard shortcut may be Control Shift F1. And if you're using a Mac, I'm told that the key combination is Control Option F1. And that's a very easy way to do it, and I use it quite often. But it also cuts off your ability to do certain things, like communicate in World. If it's important for you to see chat or to keep communicating via chat in World, you might want to keep your viewer, some of your viewer interface. So in that case, pretty much, you can simply choose to use your viewer preferences to turn off things like name tags or voice indicators or hover text or floating chat if you don't want any of those things. And of course, you could just simply close any viewer windows you don't need, like your minimap, your radar, things like that. And any windows that you do choose to keep, such as maybe your chat window, make sure it's as slim as you can possibly get it. And I recommend moving it off to the right side of the screen, because that's the side of the screen where most toasts or dialog boxes may pop up on you unexpectedly. So whatever methods you choose, once you're happy with what you have, you can further adjust the source in OBS. And you can do that just by using your mouse right in the preview area. And if you left-click and hold your mouse button anywhere in the source, you can just drag it and move it around. If you hold onto one of the if you look at the outside of your source, you're going to notice there's a red border. And on each corner, on the top and bottom, left and right, there's going to be small round handles. And if you left-click and hold on one of those handles, you can stretch your stream, or you can scale or resize your source. And you can make it very small, or you can make it really big. So that's dragging, and that's scaling. And the last thing you can do, and this is probably the most important when it comes to hiding interface elements, is you can crop the view. And to do that, you just go to one of the handles in the top, bottom, left, or right. You hold down your Alt key, and you drag one of those handles. It's like if I were to start at the top and drag down, you'll see it starts cropping out the picture. And you can tell that it's cropping because that border will turn green. So you want to go ahead and go around and do that for any interface elements you don't want to show up in your stream. And then you can move it and then scale it and adjust it so that it completely fills up your preview area. Our goal at the moment is to use all of these tools to make sure that no improper parts of the video of your viewers show up, and that there are no black bars on any side, and that you have it reasonably centered. It's okay if the source borders go outside of the preview area, just as long as everything you want to see is visible in the preview area. Once you've done this, you are now ready to stream or record. All you need to do is click on the stream, start streaming or start recording buttons, and you're all set. And when you're finished streaming or finished recording, all you need to do is hit those same buttons again to stop. And that's the very, very, very basics. So I'm going to move on to, I told you about the camera HUD, and hopefully you've all grabbed a copy of the camera HUD. And if you did, I'd like you to go ahead and find it in your inventory and wear it now. And doing a search for simply just searching for camera HUD, camera space HUD, should bring it right up in your inventory.
Can I pop in here for a second?
Absolutely.
I would just like to say too, like if you're not actually playing around with the screen capture stuff, if you're not following along with that, this piece is still useful for later on if you want to, because this will allow you, and excuse my parrot, this will allow you to sort of how to use the HUD, and then you can use it later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this part everybody can. That's a great point. Everybody can follow along on this part. You don't need OBS to follow along. And this can even be useful if you decide if you're, I think OBS is just the bee's knees. But if you decide you'd rather use Fraps or Camtasia or something, you can go ahead and still use this camera HUD with it. So when you first attach it, what you're going to see, and let me bring my viewer over into my stream. What you're first going to see is just a little black square with a blue circle in it. And when you first attach it, it will also ask for permission to take control of your camera. And when it asks for permission, this might be more obvious on some viewers than on others. On some viewers, it might just show up as asking for permission might just show up as a little icon in the lower right-hand side of your screen or top right-hand side of your screen. So you want to make sure to hunt for that, find it, and grant the HUD permission to take control of your camera. Otherwise, it will not work for you. Now, once you've attached it, and by default, it's going to go to the top of your screen. And if you're comfortable using the build tools to adjust HUDs, go ahead and move it wherever you'd like. But by default, it's at the top. And then all you need to do is click on that, and it'll open up and show you all. And it's now on, and all of its buttons are open. And you can see that there's a row of numbers, and currently they're all dark gray in color. This color indicates and always indicates that there's no camera position assigned to that number. So let's go ahead and set a camera position. Just using whatever method you like, whether it's using your viewer controls or your keyboard and mouse, or if you happen to have a 3D mouse, put your camera somewhere that has a nice view. And then on the HUD, click on Set Position. And you'll see that the HUD, all of the numbers are underlined and overlined. and this indicates that the HUD is ready for you to choose a number to assign the position to. So we're going to just click on the very first number, which is 0, and it will turn white. And that is now assigned to where your camera currently is at. So if we move our camera somewhere else, press the escape key to make sure, and this is important, make sure that you press the escape key to let your viewer be in control of your camera. The HUD will not work unless the viewer has control of your camera. And then you press 0. You will notice your camera snap right into that position. And at any time, you can go ahead and take control of your camera, move it around, and hit the escape key again to snap right back to that position. There are 20 presets for you to choose from, and that's quite a few. And if you've stored a lot of presets, you may need some way to aid your memory to recall which preset is assigned to which position. In some future version of this, I'd love to have actual labels, but for now, we do let you assign colors to each of the numbers. And hopefully that can help you remember what a preset is for. And to set a color, all we need to do is press on Set Color, and again, all the numbers will have a line over and under them. And then let's click on the 0, and then the HUD will change into a bar that's basically just a color picker. So let's say I want this to be light green. I would click on light green, and then the HUD will return to its normal state, and it will show the 0 as light green. And the other thing I should mention is you can tell which camera view is active because that camera view will have a border all the way around it. And at this point, you can really assign or reassign any preset as you like. While the viewer is in control of your camera, you only need to click on a preset, and the camera will snap to that position. You'll be able to tell which preset is active because it will have a solid border around it. And again, remember the importance of this is the escape key. I just can't say this enough. If you've manually moved the camera, the HUD will no longer be in control. You can clear position in the same fashion as we've assigned positions and colors. Just click on the clear position and choose a number. That number will return to a dark gray color, and this will indicate that nothing is assigned there. And there's even a clear all button, and this will more or less basically reset the entire HUD. All presets will be cleared, and if you hit that, it'll even ask you, are you sure? This will remove all your presets, and all you got to do is click on, it'll have a little green checkbox, a little big red X, and if you're sure, you can just click on the checkbox and everything will be cleared. And it makes sure because, it is awful easy to accidentally hit that. And I didn't want to go wiping out everybody's presets. That would be awfully upsetting. So, that's pretty much the camera HUD right there. And now for what I think is probably the most awesome and coolest and most powerful feature of OBS, and that's Studio Mode. Studio Mode allows you to set up a scene before you make it and make it part of your recording or live stream. And you can transition between scenes and get your next shot ready without your audience seeing it. You can do things backstage, as it were. And we'll start by looking at the row of buttons on the right side of your OBS interface, and one of those is Studio Mode. For those of you following along, go ahead and click on that. And you'll see that you now have two preview areas. The one on the right is what is being recorded or broadcast to your audience. That is what your audience sees. The one on the left, however, is only visible to you. You can go ahead and create scenes, add sources, and adjust them as needed, all before they go live. So, as an example scenario, let's say we'd like to be able to transition to a presentation slides. And we'd start by just adding a new scene. OBS is going to want to know what you want to name that scene. If you'd like to change the name, you can. And then you can just click OK. And you'll see that a new scene has been added. And the left preview pane is now black because there are no sources in there. But on the right, your audience is still seeing your viewer being streamed. And that's pretty awesome. So now we're going to add a source. And this time it's going to be an image source because it's a slide. And we could name this. It's going to want to know, just like when we added our viewer as a source, it's going to go through the same procedure. It just wants to know what we want to name this source, and we could name it slide 1, and then click on OK. And then it wants to know, it's going to pop up another window that just wants to know what image you want to use. So you can just hit that browse button. And I should have set this up beforehand, OBS Workshop Slides. And you can just add the image you need. And then click OK. And you can see that it's added the source, that image source, to your second scene on the left side. And for those of you who are watching on the stream, you'll see it hasn't filled up my preview area. So we can do this, we can fix that very easily, of course, by simply scaling it. Or a really quick trick, and this is great, is to make sure that that source is selected and then hit Control F on your keyboard. And you can think of that as a fit option. And it will just basically make your source fill the entire preview area and center it. And now let's say we now have a whole second scene set up. My goodness. I've talked over most of my script without even looking at it. Okay, so now what we can do, here's where the magic happens, is we can just hit the transition button that's in between the two preview panes. If we hit the transition button, the two preview windows will switch. And now our audience sees the slide. And the scene that we were broadcasting has moved over into, has moved backstage, so to speak. So at this point, if we wanted to, we could choose to change our camera angle, or add some text as a subtitle or something like that. And then when we transition back, that's what the audience will see. And right now we only have one slide. So in the slides here in World, it's just going to show that I've added that I have 3 sources in my second scene. For those of you following along on the stream, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 more slides. And here's the last one. And I'm showing you this because I want to explain about those little eye symbols that are next to your sources. For example, if you have a series of slides, and that little eye icon basically hides or shows a source in a scene. So if you have a series of slides, for example, you can enable or disable each one by just clicking on that eye. So if we wanted to move to the second slide, we would just make sure that the first slide was hidden, the second slide was visible, and then we could transition to that second slide. And we can even switch over to, work on that same scene while that scene is broadcasting to get the next slide ready to go, and then transition to that. So that's the meat of it. That's Open Broadcaster. That's how scenes work. That's how sources work. That's how you use studio mode. We've covered the camera HUD. And there's so much more that I could show you, but hopefully you've got an idea of how the software works, and hopefully you'll explore it more on your own. And even if you weren't interested in the camera HUD but are interested in OBS, make sure you click on that box, because it also contains a note card with resources and links that will let you know more, that will help you explore Open Broadcaster. So at this point, I'm happy to open up the floor to questions or comments. And you feel free to use either in-world voice or chat, whatever you're most comfortable with.
I just wanted to say on behalf of the SLMOOC that this was really useful, and I'm really looking forward to playing with the software after the session is over. I hope you don't mind if I use the Speakeasy for closed captioning on the SLMOOC version, because that's really wonderful. And we'll capture all of these links and put them in a note card in the wallboard for the students. So thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Joyce. And I don't have any questions yet, but I may write you soon.
And I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, I think OBS, like I said, it's the cat's meow, it's the bee's knees. When I hear that people are still using things like Fraps, I just get a shiver, because I'm like, oh no, it's terrible. You should be using OBS. And
it's free.
Yes, and it's free. And as Val has rightly pointed out, there's a Google Doc that's what Joyce was just copying and pasting from. For my whole, I wasn't using a Speakeasy because I've never used one before. And rather than make it complicated for me, she very graciously just copy and pasted everything in Google Doc.
And it's far less work than live typing, which is also what I often do. So, you know, I would say too, and I'm just going to go back a slide. You know, when you're in this kind of studio mode, or you know, in that kind of lower right-hand corner, you know, the start streaming and start recording. Once you have all these settings up, those are the like the magic power buttons that will sort of start everything in that way, you know. So if you just want to record, you're just hitting start recording. It'll record to wherever you've set it to record. If you want to stream and record, you can, you know, if you would put your settings on that every time you stream, it'll set up a recording archive. When you do hit start streaming, recording will also start at the same time, and you'll see that button, that both buttons will kind of deselect, you know, and then you would just press them again to stop them. So those are, I know it's quite technical with all the settings to get like the right video settings in play and audio settings in play, but once you do all that, a lot of this stuff is already set up, and then it's as easy next time as launching the software. And then, you know, if you had to add any new scenes, like if you wanted slides specific to what you were working on, you would add those, and you'd be mostly playing in this studio mode. And if you didn't have to add slides and you just wanted to record or stream what, you know, was in front of you, kind of like what we're doing here today, you would just hit start streaming or start recording. So it's as simple as that once you go through all those settings. So. And
in chat, Maggie Larimore just asked, when you're recording, are the transitions from scenes available just for recording but not streaming? No, they're available for both streaming and recording. So that you can transition in either mode, or like I said in the very beginning of the presentation, you can record and stream at the exact same time. Transitions will always work. And you may have noticed, I didn't mention this during the presentation, but you may have noticed there's a duration for the fade. And by default, as you can see in my stream and in the slides, that's only at 3,000 milliseconds, which is about a third of a second. I personally find that too short. I tend to hike all the way that all the way up to 1,000 milliseconds, which is a full second. I find that to be a nicer transition, but that's all down to personal preference, really.
And when he went through settings, those recording ones, right, besides the fact that sometimes, you know, you might be using a streaming service that could buffer, or your bandwidth could drop, or especially if you were doing this in an environment where you couldn't hardline wire your computer in, which that's another thing we didn't mention, but whatever machine you're using, and if you're streaming, just like any sort of intensive thing, and especially if you're using it Second Life as well, it's good to hardline your computer in, make sure it's connected to the internet via, you know, an Ethernet cable. But you know, recording an archive at the same time to your local computer is always good if you plan on editing that later, because it will not be subject to any of the hiccups and things that could happen in bandwidth. It won't be subject to any compression that happens on the streaming utilities website side of things. So it'll be a cleaner copy, you know. So it's great if you want to do any post editing, or you know, to also capture that local archive.
And another good thing about YouTube is that as you're streaming, you can tell it to also keep the recording on YouTube. So, you know, basically, if for some technical reason let's say your computer wasn't up to the task of both streaming and recording at the same time, you can just stream, and if you're using YouTube, YouTube will record your stream, and it will show up in your video list. But as Joyce said, if it turns out that if you are recording and streaming at the same time, which is always a good thing to do if you can, and it turns out that the YouTube recording is a little flaky for some reason, maybe something happened to your stream for whatever reason, you have a local recording that's pretty pristine. So you can go ahead and just upload that to YouTube. Plus, you can take that recording and upload it to any other services you might want to upload it to, say Facebook or what have you. So, Cat's Eye, were you able to overcome your issue?
Briefly, yes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. What did you? What was the problem?
I don't know. And it returned. I mean, I'm thinking I should maybe delete this one and reload OBS. I might have just, when I first set it up, I might have changed some settings and done some weird things.
Yeah, who knows? And you know, video drivers can be funky too. I mean, you might want to make sure you have the latest video drivers.
No,
yeah.
I can't. They won't let me. It's a Lenovo, and it's what do you call it? It's integrated. I can't.
Yeah.
So, but it was working. I have one movie, and it was working. So I know it can. So I think what I'll do is go back over your instructions. Also, when I set it up, I'm using too many. Should I?
You dropped Cat's Eye.
Oh, my voice dropped?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said when you set it up, and then we lost after that.
When you set it up, I want to be able to see a little icon of it so I can go to it. Would that be in the Start menu or in the taskbar? Because one of them seems to be on all the time. When I open it, it says it's already running, and I don't want it to keep running. So how do I do that? How do I keep it from running all the time?
By default, OBS should simply close when you hit when you close the window. There is a setting that will keep it open in the background.
I must have done that too.
But you might have accidentally hit that. And if you might try right-clicking on it and seeing if a little exit pop-up menu comes up. And if all else fails, there's always your task manager if you're running Windows. You can just open up your task manager
I should
and kill it.
reinstall it. And
it won't hurt. Yeah, it won't hurt. And Valibarian.
I think when I was installing, I screwed it up a little.
It could. It's yeah. I mean,
I was trying to make it work, and it was, and it wouldn't. Yeah. I was trying to make it work, and I made it.
Hopefully for the vast majority of us, things will go smoothly. But there's always going to be an unfortunate someone for whom there's some weird thing going on, and I'm sorry it was you.
Well, it might not be me. I mean, it might be that I did something weird because I didn't look at your, I hadn't done this class before that. I just started trying to do it by myself
Okay.
with a video on YouTube, and I think I might have just messed it up. I'm
Okay. All
keep
right.
going. I'll give you a yell if I need some help later on.
Yeah, and of course Maggie is recording this, so there's going to be an official
Right.
SLMOOC video that you can watch. And we're also going to, we've also been, I think Joyce is recording it. I'm recording what I've been doing on my end. We're going to edit together a video for Avicon that we're going to put on the Avicon channel, and we'll share that with everybody
Yay.
too.
Yay.
And
I'll
in
probably
chat,
rewatch.
yeah, by all means do. And Val Librarian was asking what format OBS records in. The video codec it uses is H.264, and the audio codec it uses is AAC. And the container can be changed. By default, that's FLV, which is an old school Flash container. And if you go under Settings and to the Output tab and look under your recording options, you'll see that there's a recording format drop-down. And you can change that to MP4, which is what I almost always use. If you prefer, you can use MOV, which is QuickTime. You can use MKV, which is Matroska, although I wouldn't really recommend using that, especially if you want to go back later and edit it, or if you want to upload it to any online services. Matroska is a great format, but it's not well supported. And the last two, you probably want to stay away from. Those are pretty technical containers. But yes, you can use MP4, and it does it very well.
Yeah, and a lot of this, we're kind of throwing around file format names, and if you've not done a lot of video or audio stuff, that may seem, a little strange at first. But to that idea that H.264 is a pretty common video codec, video file type, that it's kind of, and then the AAC is another, obviously, common. Or folks might know what an MP3 is. AAC is just that's a codec type for audio, and same sort of thing what AAC is. It's a different type of audio codec.
Yeah, and Galen DeLaren just asked, MP4 gives me warnings about video loss if not finalized. Is that actually a problem? It technically, yes. But it's never happened to me. That's all I can really say. And if you prefer using MKV, go ahead and keep using MKV. If that's been working for you, what works for you is great. For me, MP4 has been preferred because, like I said in my presentation, it's a pretty ubiquitous format. And although OBS claims that the MP4 will be unrecoverable, because I'm a very techie person, I know that I have access to tools that can, in fact, fix an MP4 that appears to be broken. But if you want a format that's absolutely not going to break if, say, your computer crashes or something, probably the only really reliable one is, unfortunately, the Flash format, FLV.
But even that, a lot of folks, that Flash is being kind of phased out, that some people won't even be able to play it.
Now, see, this is where it gets confusing. And is FLV a good resolution? See, this is where it gets confusing, and I'm going to get technical, and I'm going to try to make this as understandable as possible. You have a container. And what we have here, like when you're talking about a recording format, in Open Broadcaster, that's just a container. Think of it as a box or a package that you've gotten from Amazon. And inside that box is a movie reel and an audio cassette. So the format doesn't affect what resolution or quality the video is at or the audio is at. It's just a container that holds a stream of video and a stream of audio. So each of these containers have different strengths and different attributes that people can take advantage of on the technical side. And as we've mentioned, MP4 is very popular right now. So hopefully that clears that up.
And I also want to know, did actually anybody test where you're able to go live? Did you get that far?
Yeah, I was worried that, yeah, you have to set up the live key first. Yeah, it's like, this is a whole lot of information, so I moved kind of fast in some parts. And like for that part where we're setting up the whole how to set up for YouTube, I admit I went through that very quickly. So unfortunately, some of you may have just paid attention to what I was saying, but said I'll do that later, and that's okay. Because like we said, there's going to be at least 2 copies of this video floating around the internet that you can go back and watch. And there's actually already I gave a version of this presentation that did not include the camera HUD or studio mode to over an open simulator. There's the Hypergrid Safari, and I gave the presentation for their group. And so on our Avicon YouTube channel, that version of the presentation is there, and it also goes over all of this too.
I have a question. When I'm installing again, should I also accept the RealSense plugin? Should I install that?
There's no reason for you to, no. Unless you actually have a RealSense camera, no. And if you have a Lenovo laptop, I practically guarantee you don't. Yeah, and a camera HUD, Rhiannon just said in chat that a free camera HUD is useful for any video recording you may want to do in World. But it's also great. I primarily use it for live events. You know, when we're doing, you know, the Open Simulator Community Conference or Virtual World's Best Practices in Education or other conferences like that. The camera HUD is invaluable. But it's also very useful for doing things like machinima. So yeah, it just has all kinds of uses.
That thing about the camera HUD too is obviously every setting you set is based off of kind of where you are in that region. So Maggie, for you, if you're jumping around to various places to film, I mean, I know the Chilbo space is being used a lot, but if you're jumping around to other places to film, like you want to set those different camera places at those different other numbers, or what we sometimes did is like just create, you know, take a copy, like make a copy of the HUD and set up a HUD uniquely for that particular venue. You know, that way the only things on it are for that venue, and just attach it when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point, and I should add that to the documentation. Yeah, the camera HUD is region specific. Once you've set presets, those presets are only good for that region. If you go to another region with it, with the same HUD, and try to use those presets, wacky things will happen. So basically, for each region you want settings for, you're going to want a different copy of the camera HUD. Just make a copy and wear that, and then make new presets for specifically for that region. Fidget wants to know if you can use the HUD with Camtasia, and I don't see any reason why not. There's no reason you can't use it with anything, really, or nothing at all. Let's just say that you're just an audience member, you're not recording or streaming or anything, and you want to be lazy and set up some views. Yeah, I mean, it's you can even just use it for that if you want. You don't even have to use it for recording or streaming. You could just use it to be, lazy lookabout.
In that case, it'd almost be like your favorite shortcuts to what views you like.
Yeah, and as Maggie is saying, it's like typically for a conference or a lecture like this, I mean, I usually have one just for the slides. Well, I even go further, to be honest. What I do is I will have two machines because I happen to be lucky that way. I'll have two machines, and I'll have one just for the slides. And I disable all the interface and all that kind of stuff. And actually, I'm getting away from the main point, so forget all that. The point is that having the camera HUD and having a preset just for the slides is fantastic. It is just fantastic.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The HUDs, if you set up a HUD, is it dependent upon where you are? If, like, as long as I'm in the same region, can I change where I'm sitting? Would it still be the same?
Yes. Yeah, you could be
okay.
anywhere in the region.
So that also would mean then if, say, somebody set them up for, like, lectures where they wanted people to look, or a tour, right, where they might want people to look in various places, they could set up presets for that region and hand out the HUDs to people and tell them now click on number 1 and it'll push their camera to that view. Can you do that too?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, you can.
So
absolutely.
Another use, the idea of a kind of almost like a walking tour without walking, right?
Yeah.
Now click one and this over here is this, right?
I mean, yeah. At BWBPE, when I set up my camera shots in the keynote area, I did it while I was sitting in the audience. But when I was actually streaming, I was hidden below stage, and those settings still worked. So yeah, it doesn't. It's although the HUD is region specific, your avatar can be anywhere in that region as long as it's in that region. And the HUD will retain those settings if you give it to somebody else, as long as the script does not get reset. If you reset the script on this, it will be a blank slate again.
Which is Franz, or he might not be. Oh yes, Franz is in the audience too. Which then leads to the potentially even insidiously evil / brilliant idea that you could set up another script in here to even force people's views from, instead of buttons, you could actually force them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I've done that at some place very long ago. People used it in some stages where the audience would be, camera would move around and stuff.
Right. Like over
I've never seen it actually again after that.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, like over in the grid where we do the Open Simulator Community Conference, all the seats in the auditorium area have a script in them, and when you sit in those seats, it grabs your camera and makes you look right at the stage. So you don't even have to, if you're giving a presentation then people are showing up who are completely new to Second Life or Open Simulator, and they don't have a clue how to use the camera or how to find the stage once they sit down. That script just takes care of that problem. It goes away. So yeah.
I thought so. I was just kind of following that along. That'll have to be some separate alternate version someday.
Yeah.
More of the an audience tool for presenters who also want to, force people to look in places.
But now look at Exhibit A, and then the camera moves to Exhibit A.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in theory. That it's all well, not even theory. I mean,
I just never see anybody do it.
Yeah, but it is possible. It is very possible.
So I don't. Yes. And Fran, especially, you're another scripter too. Some of these things. I mean, obviously, Marcus, Fran, and Franz are all scripters. So to them, this is that's the wonderful thing too. And obviously, the strength of Open Broadcaster. It's free. There's a lot of folks working on. It's an open source tool that a lot of people keep working on to improve. But in the same way, even on a small scale, this HUD is developed from, like we were talking about, the Open Simulator Community Convention, and the idea that we wanted the tools that were made for it to be also open. So even this HUD, in some of the ways that we're talking about, you can take this and use this Fidget, to your point, that you can use it with Camtasia and any other, or Fraps or any other software. But then also, it's all fully open, so folks like Fran, who are working with whole brain health, or others who might be working with like learning in some way, you could take that HUD and modify it to fit this tour idea or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We should make sure the code at some point is up on GitHub or something.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. I'm just considering how to. I mean, getting the script on GitHub is easy. The hard part is getting the primps.
Yeah, more the
GitHub,
scripts. Yeah.
So I've been mulling over what the best way to do that is, and once we decide what that is, it'll definitely wind up on GitHub.
Yes, yeah, Fidget, totally. And I think, that's something that, going forward even, I mean, we're just brainstorming that piece of this, but going forward, I'm sure Marcus, Franz, even Fran, like if that's something you guys are interested, then, maybe collectively get together and sort of add all these little features, I think, and then kind of share alike in that way. That's the great thing about it being open. So yes, any more questions before we kind of jump to an open mic and announcements sort of towards the end? Yes, thank you, Marcus, for all the work put into this. As he said, and I'll share it one more time, like here is the link to the Google Doc, and the slides are interleaved into that, and actually this is useful too because it has the link, all the links. It's got our bios, but it has all the links to the description and the other things. Yes, yeah, we can do that right after this. I do want to say to folks, as Marcus was saying, the idea is some of these sort of training-y type things on the Avacon side of things that Marcus has been kind of taking initially some existing sort of Second Life and Open Simulator new user curriculum and making short videos of. If you have a link to that, Marcus, that might be useful for some of the other folks here. But we're going to do similar to this video thing as well. So we're kind of going to make like a little broken down like modules and more step by step. That'll be its ultimate kind of end result, so there's a lot to cover otherwise. But then that'll make a little self-guided. But for now, definitely go to that Google Doc. We can jump to open mic and announcements. And Maggie, if you want to sort of say your piece first on what's coming up next. I know that Val is up later. So.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you again to you guys for presenting this. This is super useful, and I know I'm going to be watching my video and your video multiple times because I can see all of these things as so useful for me going forward. And I'd like to thank all the SLMOOC students and everybody else who joined us today and who will be joining us on the video. The links that we've been getting in the chat, which isn't on screen for you, will be in the description of the video, so please look down there if you're looking for all these wonderful links to more information. I also wanted to remind the SLMOOC students that I will be sending out notices in a couple of minutes about the presentation at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, which will be Val Librarian and Dr. Marie Vans and Elise Donovan Jones talking about metaverse libraries. They'll be giving their talk at the Community Virtual Library Auditorium on the Bradley University Sim. So I'll be sending all that information out in a few minutes. And if you're not a member of the SLMOOC course, but you want to go and pick up the landmark and all the information about all of the things that we've been doing, all you have to do is go to search for the building called Integrating Technology. That's the SLMOOC headquarters building in Chilbo, and once you get over there, the entire first floor is the physical syllabus for the course. So all the information of past and present presentations are there, and where we have YouTube videos, those have been added to the note cards as well. So thank you everybody for our stuff, and thank you guys for doing this, and I'll shut my mic off now, and you can have at it.
All right, I would just like to, I'm gonna we're gonna move on to NPC stuff after this, and I just want to thank everybody so much. I mean, you're always, whenever I come here, you guys are always just wonderful and fantastic, and I'm glad, I'm so happy, to come here and talk and hang out with you guys. So thank you so much.
And I would add too that feel free to reach out to Marcus if you have like questions, or even he's usually very gracious in regards to walking people through stuff. So if you want if you want some hands-on help going through some of this stuff, and sometimes it takes a bit of that second time to kind of work out some of these problems or work out the process, then reach out to Marcus. And I have to say, the kind of selfish, guilty motive behind all that is obviously when all these events happen, like whether it be the SLMOOC or VWBPE or the Open Simulator Community Conference and all that, the more folks that know these media skills, the more people that we can have kind of jump in and contribute and capture content, which is very important, I think, for kind of archiving and sharing out the work that we all do. So that's really kind of that's the underlying selfish motive, but also media skills are great too. So but if you need extra help, ping Marcus. And then come see us to volunteer for OSCC when that happens.
Yes, please.
I'm going to shut off my recording now and head back to the headquarters to do my notices, but thank you again, you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maggie.